What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. This is the Action Network All-American release show. I'm Stuckey, and joining me as always, Collin Wilson. Brett McMurphy still on a beach somewhere with a daiquiri. He was going to join us, but he did help us come up with this All-American team, which I'm excited to announce. Collin, you ready to go through this?
Not sure if we need Brett here. We know that all of his picks are going to be Alabama players, Alabama national championship, Alabama this. So I think we will cover Brett by saying, yes, those Alabama entries came from Mr. McMurphy himself.
All right, just to summarize, a quick summary, there are 35 schools represented on our All-American teams, which are two, a first and second team. We'll go through the first team today. If you want to check out the second team before you yell at us about anybody that we missed, make sure you check out actionnetwork.com, the Action Network app, for our All-American second team. By the way, I'll mention a couple of the guys, but our group of five, Mike and Mike team, who do a great job on our group of five deep dive weekly podcast, they released their Action Network group of five All-American teams. For ours, 35 schools are represented. And there are 9 schools of multiple selections. Alabama leads the way with 7, Georgia, Notre Dame, Ohio State with 3, Clemson, Iowa, Kansas State, Michigan, and USC with 2. Among the conferences, the SEC led the way with 15 selections, followed by the Big Ten with 11, ACC with 7, Big 12 with 7, Pac-12, 5, and then a few others with 1. Our offensive player of the year, you guessed it, Bryce Young. Our preseason defensive player of the year, Alabama linebacker, Will Anderson Jr. And our preseason special teams player of the year, got Rutgers on there. Rutgers punter, Adam Corsack. So let's go through our first team All-American list, starting with quarterback Bryce Young, Alabama reigning Heisman Trophy winner. Really splitting hairs here. You could have went C.J. Stroud, who's on the second team, but we gave the nod to the reigning Heisman Trophy champ. Any thoughts on the difference between Young and Stroud, who I think we both believe are going to meet and would be a epic college football national championship?
Yeah, I mean, how do you go against Bryce Young, a guy that had 40 touchdowns and only 4 interceptions? I think it's going to be interesting to see when he has Jahmyr Gibbs in the backfield, because C.J. Stroud has already had that, explosive kind of scat back Travion Henderson, as where last year Bryce Young had Brian Robinson, who's more of a, more of a bash him and not a missed tackles kind of guy. So I'm excited to see how Bryce Young's numbers can grow even more with having Gibbs in the backfield.
Moving on to running back, I really wanted to make a case for Braylon Allen, who I love, but is he going to get enough help on that offense is going to be the question to watch, because that man is a monster. Like I said, go check out to see if he made the second team on actionnetwork.com. But our first team running back, Bijan Robinson, who should have just a monster year under Sark. Just going to put up numbers. Thoughts on Bijan?
No, I mean, it had to be him because he was the MVP of that offense last year. He will be again this year. We don't know what Quinn Ewers is going to look like, but what we're going to get is, 79 missed tackles forced, 27 runs over 10 yards. Robinson is an absolute animal. He will be at the next level. And he was easily our first pick for running back, despite the wishes of Wisconsin and Braylon Allen to see how far he would finish.
Yeah, in Texas, with that talent that they have on the outside at receiver, you can't really just key on Bijan Robinson, who should have some lanes to run through with an offensive line that was really good in that department last year. All right, let's move on to receiver. We have 3 first-team All-American receivers: Jackson Smith-Njigba from Ohio State, Jordan Addison from USC, the Pitt transfer, Biletnikoff winner from last year, and Kayshon Boutte from LSU. Jordan Addison was kind of the question mark here for me, just because there's only one ball in USC, and there's a lot of talent, but there's just so many names that you could choose from in college football. Any thoughts on maybe the USC receiver room or any one of these receivers that we named to our first team list?
Well, these are three receivers that can actually move a point spread a little bit, maybe less so with Jordan Addison, considering how many weapons USC has. But we don't move power ratings based upon losses at wide receiver. But with these, we would actually probably deduct a point. Kayshon Boutte means so much to that LSU offense, what they can do, drawing double teams, allowing other wide receivers to get open. But Jackson Smith-Njigba, his numbers are just astronomical, especially considering he had 2 NFL draft picks, first round draft picks on the squad with him last year, and he was the best wide receiver. More importantly, he was 3.56 yards per route run. That makes him one of the most explosive wide receivers in all of college football and was a shoe-in for first team here.
All right, let's move on to tight end. And we went with Georgia tight end Brock Bowers in one of the most loaded tight end rooms that we have ever seen. Spoiler, Michael Mayer from Notre Dame was the second team tight end. Thoughts on Bowers and that loaded tight end room at Georgia, which they're going to be tough to defend.
Yeah, Michael Mayer was I can understand people that would want him first team, for a tight end. But when you look at what Georgia has, especially with Brock Bowers and the way that he was utilized down the stretch, he was completely unstoppable, and a big reason that they won the national championship and the semifinal game against Miami. When you look at yards per route run, when it comes to Brock Bowers, he's at 3.24 last year. That's just shy of what we talked about with Jackson Smith-Njigba. So, Michael Mayer is a great possession tight end, but not as explosive as what we get with Brock Bowers. I think what's interesting about Bowers is that now he's in like the best tight end unit in all of the nation, considering what Georgia has there, what they're going to be putting on the field this year.
All right, let's go through the offensive line. Offensive tackle, Peter Skronsky, Northwestern. Paris Johnson Jr. at Ohio State. 2 Big Ten bookends. Inside at guard, we have Clark Barrington from BYU and Caleb Chandler at Louisville. And our center is from Michigan, Oluwatimi. I hope I didn't butcher his name on our All-American list. But Michigan should have one of the best offensive lines in college football once again. And it all starts with the man in the middle. 3 Big Ten offensive linemen. Any commentary you'd like to have?
Yeah, I mean, the running attack at Michigan was so successful because of Oluwatimi last year. So he is a definite must watch when it comes to, the podcast. Stuckey and I like to focus in on important players on the offensive line that can affect the running game. And this is definitely 5 guys that can do that. But the highest rated as far as both in pass blocking and in run blocking is Caleb Chandler out of Louisville. So I would put these 5 names along with our second team when you see the article in your back pocket. Check on their health, make sure these guys are healthy, because that has a cascade effect across the rest of the unit for their respective teams.
All right, let's move on to the first team defense. Let's start up front this time. Defensive ends. Will McDonald from Iowa State. On a defense that did lose a lot, Will McDonald is a star. Isaiah Foskey from Notre Dame. And inside, we have, guess what? A Georgia player, defensive tackle. Not a shock. Jalen Carter. And at Clemson, Brian Brzee. Any thoughts on the defensive line?
Yeah, with Brian Brzee down at Clemson, you have to wonder if Miles Murphy made the second team. So you might want to check out the article to see that. Clemson's defensive line is supposed to be better than the 2018 version that led them to the national championship. So keep an eye on those guys. Will McDonald is going to be one of the main holdovers in Iowa State. He is going to be critical in generating pressure on opposing quarterbacks. If he's not there, Iowa State defense is definitely going to take a step back. And Jalen Carter at defensive tackle, he was called better than anybody that they fielded last year. So that is scary for opposing offensive lines. Keep tabs on these guys. They are instant pressure makers and make a huge difference in the box score.
At linebacker, of course, Will Anderson Jr. from Alabama. One of the most dominant seasons we've seen on the defensive end last year, and only can imagine what we're going to see this year. Noah Sewell from Oregon, and Drake Thomas is the representative from NC State, who arguably could have the best linebacker room in all of college football from top to bottom. Would you agree?
Yeah, I completely agree 100%. And I think, we're kind of light on betting deliverables on this podcast, but let's give one out. They are now posting to finish, top 3, top 5 in the Heisman race, who will take trips to New York. Those props are starting to come out at certain books this late in August. And I see Will Anderson in there a lot. I saw Will Anderson 4-1 earlier this morning. This is a player who is getting a ton of respect from writers, journalists, voters, everybody. And I would not be surprised if he finishes second, like Aiden Hutchinson did last year. All the talk last year with the Heisman voting was the fact that Will Anderson should be the defensive player that's in that top 3 and not Aiden Hutchinson. So we're going to see if some of that sentiment rolls over this year. Take a flyer on Will Anderson to make it to New York, finish top 3, top 4. That's a great bet to make right now.
All right, let's move on to the secondary on the defense. We have a pair of corners from the SEC in Ricks and Ringo. Ricks coming from LSU to Alabama. And at the safety position, another Alabama defensive back in Jordan Battle. And you got Arkansas representation on here with Jalen Catalon. I know you also wanted to, I think you wanted to maybe get your guy Bumper on here too, on the defense. He didn't quite make it, but a lot of SEC, 4 SEC members in the defensive backfield on our All-American list. Give some love to your boy, Jalen.
Yeah, Jalen Catalon is such a difference maker for that Arkansas defensive secondary. You can see the production that the opponents have once he's left games, whether it's been to injury or anything like that. Catalon has been the glue in that secondary for Barry Odom at defensive coordinator, to call those nickel and dime defenses. And he's been a leader for all of the new faces that we've had come through. So it was an easy pick to get Catalon in there. He is extremely important. Another player of which we mentioned, if he's hurt, it makes a difference in the handicap of the team. So, Ringo is the same way. Ricks, although I will say, there are some very strong corner candidates at Alabama. But, when it comes to a player like Jalen Catalon at Arkansas, there is no replacement. So definitely keep an eye out on Mr. Catalon, who's probably going to go pretty high in the NFL draft here coming up next year.
And by the way, I do want to mention I think our group of 5 defensive player of the year was Carlton Marshall out of Troy, who is a tackling machine. And I believe he is 100 some away from breaking the all-time career FBS tackle record. So we'll see if he can get there. Good luck to Mr. Marshall. And then, of course, our first team special teams, which I was excited for. We mentioned our punter, Adam Corsack for Rutgers, where maybe their one and only weapon on that team. Kicker, we got Harrison Mevis, my boy from Missouri, who with the first game I saw him, read so much about him. I was like, this guy's going to be the next kicking star in the NFL. I think he has a bright future ahead of him. Returner, we have South Florida has made the first team with Brian Batty, and then Deuce Vaughn, all-purpose for Kansas State. Any thoughts on the special teams?
Yeah, Deuce Vaughn was an easy pick. That is absolutely one of the most undefendable players in all of college football. Brian Batty, what he does from a special teams perspective, he's one of the few options on South Florida to score points. And then as far as our punter goes, Adam Corsack, I got to interview him at Big Ten Media Days.
There it is.
I asked him flat out. I said, listen, we had the punt god last year, Matt Ariza, and I said, Stuckey and I pride ourselves on giving nicknames to our punters, and Stuckey is a punter connoisseur. I said, what would you like your nickname to be this year? And he said, you know what, that's for you guys to decide. So Stuckey and I will try to come up with a nickname for Adam Corsack, who is our first team punter. Last year, such a huge edge in field position, which is one of the 5 factors that Matt Araiza was able to do for San Diego State. Keep opponents pinned. Now you're seeing that in the NFL, and it becomes more important on the college football level.
By the way, Michigan fans, Jake, who are going to be clamoring for Jake Moody as the kicker, he did make second team. Wanted to give him a shout out. Michigan fans always in my mentions mentioning him and their special teams, which should be excellent once again.